Adam, give him a warm welcome so he can correct everything that I just mispronounced, and tell you a wonderful story. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much, Ken. You did pretty well, actually. One of the first things I want to go ahead and address after I thank everybody very sincerely for being visible, being vocal, and being willing to share, is that I do identify as mestizo American. What is that? What is it? Why do I use it? What it means is that I am not only white European in heritage and descent, but it's also that I am also part indigenous, indigenous American. And I get that through my father, who is Guanajuatense. He's from Guanajuato, Mexico. Why do I use mestizo instead of Hispanic, instead of Latino, instead of Chicano? And it's because those things imply a certain type of cultural perspective that I wasn't raised with. And yet I want to make sure that people are aware that Native peoples are not somebody that lives always on a res. They're not necessarily somebody that even are what we perceive of as being Native peoples. Most of the people that you meet that are from Latin American countries are in fact at least somewhat, if not by and large, indigenous. So I do that as a way to honor my heritage, as a way to remain visible. See, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, as I mentioned, or as Ken mentioned, and growing up mixed, and specifically in the type of background that I grew up in, I grew up in a very racist family. My mom's family has been here since the colonies, and she grew up on a farm that has been in my family since the 1700s. And she came from North Carolina. They came up here, and my mother was never a racist person, but she was raised in a very racist environment. And she married a raging racist, who never never missed an opportunity to let me know that I was different and less than. In fact, I can remember being out in the backyard playing with my friends from the neighborhood, and he opened up the window and said, "What is little Mexico doing in my backyard?" And I remember turning around and saying, "But one of them's from India." So anyway, he was a violent person. He was mentally ill. He was an alcoholic. He was volatile, loud, angry, very strong, and controlled every aspect of our lives. All of this stuff came together to teach me that being invisible was a way to keep me safe. Being visible meant being vulnerable. I wasn't like a lot of kids in the first place. I was able to read the Tribune at age 4. That can kind of, if you extrapolate a bit, that kind of gives you an idea of the level of social awkwardness that I started off with and that I still deal with. Growing up, we learned a lot based on a lot of outdated info. My mom still uses words like pleurisy and water brash and stuff like that to describe things that we've learned not to describe in such an outdated way. But I remember that we were always encouraged to talk with her about things that we had questions about, and sexuality was no different, except that on our shelf at home, we had a book that was written in the 1960s about human sexuality. And we didn't really talk about that a lot. She grew up with a very unhealthy attitude towards that. And in the book, queer identity as it was really, it was reduced to a phase of hetero life that would pass. It was written in a time and by people who didn't value difference in people at all, and maybe weren't actually doing science. I don't know. But I also grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I grew up witnessing the ravages of the AIDS epidemic. my perspective of that was colored by the fact that it was largely whitewashed for sitcom audience. You heard a lot about people who were born with HIV, who contracted it through no fault of their own. And the implication was that those people who were dying in droves deserved what they got. If you were gay or if you were lesbian and you actually made it into visible life, you were a joke or a side note. If you were bi, if you were trans, if you were other queer of any persuasion, you might as well be the tooth fairy back then. You didn't exist. And in suburban American life, the 80s was all about blending in. Looking back, visibility wouldn't even have been viable had I been old enough to understand what I was about to experience. But because of the violence at home, I started in with social work and counseling. And I started probably around fourth grade, fifth grade. And this taught me to share my feelings. And it taught me that sharing my feelings and what was going on inside me was not only safe, but it was absolutely vital. By the time I was in middle school, I also learned about my own talents and started exploring the performing arts and other arts, visual arts, performing arts. And I found something that would not only keep me away from home with the extracurriculars, but I also found a world where I could actually be visible and safe. In high school, I was in all the plays, all the musicals. I was in choir. I was the captain of the speech team 2 years in a row. Went to speech for original comedy and to state rather for original comedy and for special occasion speech. And I achieved and achieved and achieved. I was on the honor roll all the time. I was constantly involved in the literary magazine. I worked on the yearbook. I did so many things to keep myself away from home and to be visible, to be participatory in the school community. And when I was 17, my stepfather tried to kill me. I was involved in a peer program back then called Operation Snowball. That's where I met our friend Elena. And actually, I met her in English class, but that's where we spent a lot of good time together. And it was during that time, after he had tried to kill me, that my stepfather, then his mental illness took him completely, and he took his own life. At that point, I was already living outside the home. It was the second time I had left home, and I was struggling to understand who I was at this point. I had already realized that I was attracted to guys as well. And I was attempting to emancipate myself at 17. It was a turbulent period of time. But I used that program to engage in public speaking because I knew that not only could I help heal myself by being visible, but I could help other people struggle through their time as well. I learned at that point in my life that visibility also could mean vitality. So you fast forward a little bit of time, I dropped out of the music ed program at Illinois Wesleyan. I wasn't really getting any therapy anymore, and I lost my contact with a lot of people that I knew. I was out to my mom, and while there was minimal acceptance of me because you're my son and I love you, even hand-holding was not allowed in front of my brothers for fear that they would catch the gay. I don't really know. But my mom was going through her own process. And she would say things like, you know, I know you're gay and everything, but you and so would make beautiful children. Just saying. I developed a career. I was in the working world. And in some of my jobs, over time, it was a great place to be gay, as long as you were gay like everybody else. In other places, you didn't want to risk appearing different in any way, lest you lose your position or maybe even make yourself unsafe physically. Socially, throughout my life, I've heard a lot of I'm okay with you being gay. I mean, it's okay if people are gay. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, just as long as you're not in my face about it. As if I have some kind of gay anatomy that I'm slapping people around with. I don't know what that's about either. But over time, after a couple of sexual assaults that I didn't really want to talk about because who would believe that a man could be sexually assaulted not once but twice in his adult life? I learned it was time to be invisible again. And especially during the times that I identified as bi, because it was always it was always a response of, well, I mean, I don't even know how, like, how does that, like, how does it, like, do you, how does it, like, I don't get it. Because it was for anyone else to get. Visibility was, again, not always viable. So you fast forward to probably about 7 years ago, I think, I started to notice that society was accelerating, that technology was starting to cause us to relate to each other differently. And I began to fall prey to a fear of social media. The doxings, the teardowns, the flame wars, the public shaming, all of it just disgusted and terrified me. I mean, who would choose to be visible in this kind of environment where someone could ruin your life just because they didn't like you? You'd have to be completely oblivious to the way that works, or an absolute narcissist who wants it anyway. And having been wired for trauma, I didn't understand how to navigate this world. So I withdrew. I read, I played video games, and while I was always out among my friends and my tribe, I was safely hidden from the world. And I did manage to meet people online who thought like me, who I was able to bond with and create a community with, and they helped to keep me going through some very tough times. But I was always still safely hidden. When I started therapy again a few years ago, I learned about Brene Brown and her TED Talk on vulnerability. I learned that, yes, visibility does mean vulnerability. But vulnerability is a really cool place to be because it can lead to personal evolution. It can lead to creativity. That can lead us to connection. At the end of last year and the beginning of this year, there was a series of traumas that stopped my life completely and cold. Right in the middle of dealing with some of my own invisible illnesses, some of my own mental illnesses, and trying to find some kind of answers in my search for a diagnosis for why am I so neurologically atypical. It was right after that that COVID came and locked me in the house due to illness that's invisible but keeps me at risk to this day. So I decided at that point I was going to take a chance. I was going to start expressing myself again. And what I found was feedback. What I found was connection. I found encouragement that I had been lacking for so long. People would say, I've missed you so much. And I'd say, yes, I've missed me too. This sense of visibility started to return, and my creativity just opened up. I realized that the vulnerability that was engendered by visibility is not only potentially a really good thing, but it's necessary for survival. And I realized I can't keep this to myself anymore. COVID gave me time to think about my voice, and it's been a tragic, horrible thing. But we can always find blessings in things that are difficult and deadly. I have learned how to be intensely thankful for a faith community I never expected to be part of, because growing up, they hated me, right? They hated us. But I go to a place, well, not anymore, but we still manage to be together online, where everyone is welcome and we mean everyone. In fact, when all this is over, I can't wait to get in that choir stall right next to the pastor's husband. These guys are some of the coolest dudes you'd ever wish to meet. And that church community welcomes me with open arms. This time also gave me pause for those that are out there still fighting to be seen. Black, brown, trans, people of every racial, ethno-cultural minority, every LGBTQ stripe on the spectrum, because guess what? Let's not forget that that is what our flag means. We are a spectrum, beautiful, shining spectrum. And for some of us on that spectrum, visibility is still not viable. For some people, visibility is still dangerous. I personally believe we are one consciousness trying desperately to understand itself through different physical points of space-time. So I'm going to take this last bit of time that I have with you and beg you, plead with you, to be visible, to stay visible if you already are. If you aren't yet and you're not quite sure if you can be, I understand. But if you feel like you can be, I want you to be visible for the you that is not just physically you, but for the you that may be struggling in the past. Or be visible for the you that is across the planet, who finally sees and hears something that the physical you actually produces and puts out into the world, somebody who can't be visible for themselves. Give them hope with your visibility. Yes, visibility breeds vulnerability. And vulnerability can lead to powerful change through creativity and connection. Power. With great power, said Stan Lee, comes great responsibility. So please, be visible, be vocal, do not quit. You are lovable, you are capable, and you are worthy of using your voice. Don't ever forget that, not even for a second. Let your light shine. Stay visible. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for that. That was something that I kind of needed to hear today, Adam. So thank you a lot. And now, Tony. And Tony.
Yeah, there you go. Live. This is like live TV. I had a couple stories to read, but I was really moved by tonight's speakers. And I don't think I'm going to, I will read one. And it goes, this is one for you, Ken. LGBTQ political representation jumped 21% in the past year. This is an article written by Tim Fitzsimmons, dated July 16. At least 843 LGBTQ people currently serve in elected offices across the United States, constituting a 21% increase since June 2019. According to the LGBTQ Victory Institute's Out for America 2020 census of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer elected officials. Particularly pronounced increases were seen in the number of LGBTQ mayors, with a 35% year over last year. The number of bisexual and queer identified people with an increase of 53% and 71% respectively, And the number of transgender women serving in the elected offices has increased by 40%. Much of this increase was driven by what Victory Institute calls a rainbow wave, a surge in LGBTQ wins in the 2018 and 2019 elections. Victory hopes that 2020 will usher in even more LGBTQ people into elected office. I just want to thank everybody. Jennifer, Josh, Danica, Adam, excellent message. All of you gave wonderful testimony tonight. And I thank you that you were a part of Outward's journey. Again, if you want to know more about Outward's journey, contact me, Tony, at Outwards, OUTWORDS.org, or you could email me at Outwards, OUTWORDSS@gmail.com. Ken, I want to thank you again for hosting tonight. And just everybody stay tuned, because I'm trying to put the Zoom and the live broadcast together for the end of September. Thanks everybody for showing up. Bye.
Awesome job, Tony.
Awesome.
Thank you,
you all.
speakers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, speakers.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Being here.
Oh, the puppy.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank
You
you.
gathered some great voices tonight, so thank you. This is a wonderful storytelling.
Yeah, it was. I was moved. You know, it's different when you talk to them on the phone and you read the story, but when they tell the story, connect with the individual. You really do. And I think it makes so much more, has so much more power. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I
Okay.
never know what to expect, but goodness.
Yeah, it's always new.
Powerful.
Thanks. We'll keep it up.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
night.
Thank you so much for this again.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
Great, great, great. I want to talk to you about your church sometime.
Yes,
He's gone, I think. Yeah, I'm curious what church he goes to.
I'd like to.
Yeah,
know that.
I'm gonna call him. We'll find out.
All right, Tony, I will try to get you the second half of recording. And then Josh offered to put them together if I can figure out how to get them to you.
Joe will download them to me from Zoom, and then I could send them to Josh.
Okay, so when I hit record and I said to the cloud, it's going straight to Zoom.
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I was worried about that. Okay, great. So yes,
thank
he
you.
was willing to put those together. It probably is missing a little bit of time, and unfortunately, I think it's missing Ken Zinger, which was great.
Well, I missed it because I came back after everybody was laughing.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Ken said that there was an announcement today for a presidential candidate, and he wanted to make sure that we all understood how to pronounce this candidate's name. He said, you know, now to set the record straight, you know, I'm going to pronounce it so that we all have an opportunity to know. And he
And
said,
then you said Joe.
no.
Yeah. That's where I came in when he said Joe. That was great, because I'm always having a problem. I think he did that because I'm always having a problem with his middle name.
No, I think he did that because people really are acting like they're struggling with Kamala. Like it's so hard to get.
Oh. Okay. That was a good one. That was a
It
good
was.
one.
It was very, very well done. So, all right.
Thank you, Antoinette.
Night.
Night. Thank you.